Atheists are champions of science and reason who have carefully and honestly examined the evidence for God's existence and found this evidence sorely lacking. And now that they've thoroughly debunked belief in God, they demonstrate their sober rationality by spending every waking moment on social media posting, "Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy." But don't let these endless cries of "Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy" make you think that these intellectual powerhouses have simply been programmed by manipulators using cult tactics. No. These brainiacs are as meticulously rational as a cosmologist riding the calculus coaster at Logic Land on Trekkie's Get-In Free Day. At least, that's what they keep telling me. Sadly, I'm not a super smart atheist anymore, so when I try to figure out what's going on, all I see is a handful of academics who will reject any evidence for God, no matter what it is, conditioning a young generation to reject any evidence for God, no matter what it is, while making this young generation think that they're just going where the evidence points. To me, bonehead that I am, it looks like cult tactics. Hey, kid, do you want to be special? Do you want to be part of the smart group? Do you want to feel like you're better than everyone else? Jeepers, that would be swell! Well then, join us, and you'll be part of the smart group. You'll be special. Golly, is there anything I need to do? Just one thing. You have to spend all day, every day on social media posting, "Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy." Richard Dawkins was once asked, if God did exist, what sort of evidence could God give you that would convince you that he exists? Dawkins couldn't think of anything. He said that if God audibly spoke to him, he would dismiss it and conclude that he's hallucinating. He said that even if God wrote a message to him in the stars, he still wouldn't believe in God, because the message in the stars could have been put there by powerful aliens trying to trick him. Peter Boghossian, the atheist philosopher who was interviewing him, agreed completely. And they're not alone. Let's hear from the great Oxford chemist Peter Atkins, who, like Richard Dawkins before him, was asked about the sort of evidence that could potentially prove him wrong. Here's the charge against him.
I think at one level, some people might accuse you of being so committed to atheism that you'd never be willing to countenance any evidence that might lend support to a creator behind the universe.
And now the question.
I'm just interested, what sort of evidence could science or the physical universe present to you that would make you think, actually, that is evidence that there's a mind behind this?
I find that a very difficult question.
Shouldn't be too difficult.
If I were looking in the Bible for evidence, heaven forbid, I would expect to see maybe increase in entropy is equal to Q reversible divided by temperature.
So, amazing scientific insights in the Bible. That would convince you?
If there was literally an equation in the Bible,
an equation
like
in
that.
the Bible, rather than all this wishy-washy, elastic writing that it pervades.
Right.
An equation? That would do it?
So if there was something like that they discovered in the Bible,
then I'd think it was
you'd
probably a
that-
forgery.
Well, exactly. The problem is, would it actually make you?
Oh, you'd explain it away? Interesting. But what if you saw a message written in the stars?
No.
I mean, is there anything from, is there
think-
any kind of evidence in the universe that could make, I mean, if the stars lined up to spell, Peter, please believe in me, it's about time. Would that
I
convince
put
you?
it down to madness.
So, if you saw a message written in the stars, you would explain it away, just like Richard Dawkins and Peter Boghossian.
Sounds like, Peter, that there's no evidence that will persuade you away from atheism.
Well, to be honest, I think that's probably the case.
At least he's honest. Not about the evidence, but about the fact that he's going to reject the evidence no matter what it is.
In that sense,
Wow.
do you even have an evidence-based view if you're actually committed to atheism a priori?
No.
Well, I'm predicting that there will be no such evidence. That's not quite the same thing as being committed to it a priori. I can't.
But you've said there's no
envisage-
evidence that would persuade you otherwise.
I think it's much more likely that I would have gone mad than such evidence would have been provided.
You are not helping yourself here, Dr. Atkins.
So in principle, it's impossible to ever persuade you that God exists.
I didn't quite say that.
I think you did.
Well, what would persuade you?
I can't conceive of. I suppose even if I died and was confronted with, St. Peter saying, "Welcome to heaven," I'd probably think I was dreaming.
So, even if you died and you were welcomed into heaven by St. Peter, you still wouldn't believe. Keep in mind, these are the same people who assure us that they're committed to going wherever the evidence points. If I didn't know better, which I don't, I might think that what they're really committed to is rejecting evidence that points in a direction they don't like. How very scientific of them. So, those were a few clips from a discussion between Peter Atkins and Hugh Ross. During a different discussion, this time with John Lennox, people were texting in questions, and Dr. Atkins was asked if there's any evidence that could convince him that he's wrong.
What new evidence would be sufficient to lead the speakers to adopt the opposite view? So if I perhaps ask that first of you, Peter,
Yeah.
is there any kind of evidence that John could bring to bear that would actually make you change your mind and think actually maybe there is a God?
I'll give everyone 5 seconds to make your predictions.
I think that's very interesting. I have asked myself that question previously. Is there any evidence that would flip me into the belief camp and so on? And I simply can't think of any.
Shocker.
I think if I tell myself that if I agreed with some evidence, then it showed that I'd simply gone mad.
If he ever agreed that any evidence supported theism, he would think that he'd gone insane.
So it's a serious question, but I don't think there can be any evidence.
Are you saying your
I mean,
position is unfalsifiable in that sense?
Yes.
Again, at least he's honest about rejecting any evidence that he disagrees with.
Even if I was standing, at the foot of a cross and saw the resurrection before my very eyes, I would put it down to hallucination.
Even if he saw Jesus rise from the dead, he would explain away what he saw. He would say, I must be hallucinating. Seeing a person rise from the dead wouldn't convince him. Matt Dillahunty said something very similar in his debate with Mike Licona. Mike said, look, if I was beheaded in front of everyone and you saw my decapitated corpse, and then I came back and I walked in and I told you about my trip to heaven, and I told you about someone I met there, someone who had had a private conversation with you, and I knew the details of that conversation, even though the person was dead, would that convince you that something supernatural had occurred? Matt immediately replied, no. The takeaway from all of this definitely isn't that atheists follow the evidence. The takeaway is that pretty much any evidence can be reinterpreted and explained away by people who are committed to an unfalsifiable position. Atheists aren't educating the rest of the world on how to go where the evidence points. The leaders are giving a tutorial on how to reinterpret and explain away evidence that they don't like, and on how to psychologically condition people by making them think that they're part of some elite group, as long as they go on Twitter and post, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy. Meanwhile, the followers are walking, talking, whining proof of that old saying, There's a sucker born every minute.